I still remember that Christmas morning. The house was quiet, filled with that soft warmth that only winter light brings. The fireplace cracked in the corner, and the smell of cinnamon rolls drifted from the kitchen. It was supposed to be a peaceful day, a family day. My daughter Emily had come home from the city with her husband Mark. She'd just landed a big promotion at her marketing firm, and I could tell she carried herself differently now, confident, polished, always on her phone. It made me proud and sad at the same time. We used to be close. When her mother passed away 10 years ago, it was just the two of us. I taught her how to fix things around the house, how to manage money, how to keep her word. But lately she'd been distant, too busy for calls, too tired to visit. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up, lives change. That morning, I gave her a small, carefully wrapped box. I had worked on it for weeks. Inside was a gold locket, one that belonged to her mother. But it wasn't just jewelry. Inside the locket was a tiny folded note, a message her mother wrote before she died. It was the last letter her mother ever penned, sealed in my drawer for all these years. Emily never knew it existed. I wanted her to have it now, when she was old enough to understand its meaning. She smiled politely when I handed her the gift. "Thanks, Dad," she said, distracted, scrolling through her phone. Later, when I stepped out to check on the roast, she whispered something to her husband. That evening, I found the same box sitting quietly on my table, but something was off. When I opened it, the locket was gone. In its place was an envelope of cash. $2,000. A note was attached. "Dad, please use this instead. You don't need to give me old things. I want you to enjoy life. Love, Emily." I just stood there, holding that envelope in my hand. My chest felt heavy. She didn't even open it. She had replaced her mother's last memory with money. And that was the day I stopped trying to explain love to those who measure it in dollars. I live in a small town in Oregon. After retiring from my job as a carpenter, I spent my days restoring furniture, walking by the lake, and tending to the garden my wife once loved. Life had slowed down, peacefully, predictably. Emily used to help me plant tulips every spring. She'd dig messy holes, drop the bulbs in, and smile like she'd built a forest. That memory still lives somewhere deep in my heart. After her mother's passing, she changed. Not suddenly, but little by little. The laughter became rarer, replaced by ambition. She wanted to leave our small town, see the world, and make something of herself. I admired that. But over time, she began to treat simplicity as failure. When she graduated college and got her first job in New York, she told me, "Dad, I'll take care of you someday. I'll make sure you never have to work again." I smiled then, but I already had everything I needed: a roof, my tools, and peace. What I wanted most wasn't her money. It was her time. Over the years, I saw her less. The calls became shorter. The visits rarer. And when she did come home, she spoke about business deals, clients, and numbers, never about people. Still, I waited patiently. I didn't complain. I told myself, love sometimes hides behind silence. When I decided to give her the locket, it wasn't about sentimentality. It was about connection. Her mother's last words, written with trembling hands, filled with warmth and hope. That letter said, "Emily, when life becomes too loud, remember where your heart began. Your kindness is your greatest strength. Never trade it for success." But she never read it. Instead, she gave me cash, as if love could be refunded. After that Christmas, things grew colder between us. She called once or twice, but it felt mechanical. "Hey Dad, are you okay? Need anything?" she'd say while typing emails. I always replied, "I'm fine, sweetheart," even when my chest tightened from disappointment. Mark, her husband, was polite but distant. He came from a wealthy family and often hinted that I should sell the house and move into an assisted living place. "It'd be easier for everyone," he said one evening, sipping wine. Everyone. That word echoed in my mind. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about convenience. Months passed, and I noticed Emily had started selling old family things: antique chairs, her mother's piano, even my old watch. She said she was helping me declutter, but each sale stung like a quiet betrayal. I realized she saw me not as a father, but as a project. Something to manage. The last straw came one summer when she and Mark visited again. They told me they'd found a great opportunity to invest in a luxury property. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime deal, Dad," she said, her eyes shining. "If you sell the house and give us part of the money, we can make huge returns. You'll thank me later." I looked at her calmly. "Emily, this house isn't just walls. It's your mother's laughter. Your childhood. Every nail here carries a memory." She sighed. "Dad, you're being emotional again. It's just a property." That sentence broke something inside me. I realized she no longer understood the difference between value and worth. So I smiled quietly and said, "All right. Let me think about it." That night I made a decision, not out of anger but clarity. I wouldn't scold her. I wouldn't argue. But I would teach her something her money never could. The next morning, I visited my lawyer, Mr. Grant. He was an old friend, someone who'd known our family for decades. I told him I wanted to make some changes to my will. He raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay, David?" I nodded slowly. "Everything's fine. I just want to make sure what I built goes where it's valued, not sold." We spent hours going through papers, drafting clauses, and setting things in motion. I decided to donate most of my estate, my land, the workshop, even my vintage truck, to the local community center. They were struggling to stay open, and this would keep them alive for years. But I didn't leave Emily with nothing. I left her something small, a key. The key to the old chest in my attic. Inside that chest, I placed her mother's locket, still unopened, along with a letter from me. I sealed it carefully, locked the chest, and handed the key to Mr. Grant. "When I'm gone," I told him, "give this to her personally. Tell her to open it when she's ready, not before." He nodded, understanding without questions. Months later, Emily convinced me to sell part of my land. She promised she'd handle the details. I agreed, pretending to trust her plan. But before signing anything, I quietly transferred the deed to the community center's name. She didn't notice, until the sale fell through. When she called, her voice was sharp. "Dad, what did you do? The property isn't even in your name anymore." "I know," I said calmly. "It belongs to people who need it more than we do." She was furious. "You've lost your mind. Do you know how much money you just gave away?" I replied softly, "Enough to buy back something you can't, your soul." Then I hung up. That was the last time we spoke for a while. 3 years later, my health started to fade. The days felt slower, quieter. I spent most mornings sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, watching the sun paint gold on the lake. Emily visited one day, unannounced. She looked different. Tired. The city had drained her glow. "Dad," she said quietly, sitting beside me. "Mark and we're separating. Things didn't work out." I nodded gently. "I'm sorry to hear that." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You were right. I kept chasing success, and somewhere along the way I lost everything." We sat in silence for a while. The air between us was heavy but honest. She looked at me and whispered, "Do you still have that old locket? The one you gave me?" I smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart. You do. You just haven't opened it yet." Confusion crossed her face. Then I told her about the chest in the attic and gave her the key. That night, I heard her footsteps creak across the floorboards. The attic door opened. Then silence. Hours later, she came downstairs, tears streaming down her face, clutching the locket in her hands. She opened it, finally. Her mother's note was still inside, yellowed but intact. She read it aloud through trembling lips. "Emily, When life becomes too loud, remember where your heart began. Your kindness is your greatest strength. Never trade it for success. When she finished, she looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years.
Dad,
I'm so sorry, she said, voice cracking.
I didn't understand.
I thought I was helping you. I smiled softly. You were helping yourself, Emily. But sometimes, life teaches lessons we ignore until we lose everything else. She hugged me then, tightly, desperately, as if time itself could be undone by love.
That night, she stayed.
She cooked dinner, laughed quietly, even washed the dishes. It felt like having my little girl back again, if only for a while. I passed away 6 months later. Peacefully in my sleep. The neighbors said I looked like I was smiling. Maybe I was. Emily took over the house but didn't sell it. Instead, she restored it, every corner, every creaking stair, every flower in the garden. She started volunteering at the same community center that now stood proudly on the land I donated. She helped children there, taught them about dreams, kindness, and patience.
People said she changed.
I think she simply remembered who she was meant to be. Years later, one of the kids from the center found my name carved on the foundation stone. Who was David Miller? He asked. Emily smiled and said, he was my father, the man who gave me everything I didn't know I needed. She still wears that locket around her neck. Not because it's gold, but because it carries a story, a reminder that real love doesn't need money to be felt. And sometimes, quiet lessons echo louder than any scolding ever could. Life lesson. Sometimes people replace meaning with money, thinking they're doing good. But what truly matters can't be bought, it's felt, remembered, and lived. Revenge doesn't always need anger. Sometimes, the calmest justice is to let truth reveal itself in time. And as I learned long ago, sometimes silence is the best revenge.